Welcome, everyone. It's an honor to have Zack Kass with us. Zack is a futurist. He is the chair for Rudolphin AI Advisory Council, and he's on a whirlwind tour in India. He's been in Bangalore yesterday, and he's leaving for Pune tonight. But we're fortunate that we've been able to catch some of his time today at this forum. So, Zack, thank you so much for taking your time to be with us.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect. So we are going to straight away jump into some of the interesting questions which have come from our people on the floor, and some I think which we've always wanted to ask, but we had nobody who could answer that. So one of the first questions which I would love to ask you is that we've all grown up watching movies wherein either AI saves us or AI dooms us. So whether it's the Terminator or it's the Matrix Reloaded, what do you think? Where are we headed towards with AI?
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek has some pretty utopian ideas. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has some interesting, pro-machine ideas, but I think they're very rare. I've actually never read a book or seen a movie where the machine comes to our rescue. And in fact, most utopian films and books stopped being made so long ago that there isn't actually a story about how the world gets better. And the stories about technology and machines in particular, artificial intelligence, are typically told in a world where we are worse off because the machines and humans have to save ourselves from them, usually by some close call where the world has to sort of reset. And these dystopian and post-apocalyptic films serve to give everyone some fantastical idea of what might happen without actually being rooted in any scientific theory. And the problem with these movies is that most of them suggest that we are at the peak of civilization. So we've been making dystopian films for actually quite a long time. One of the first films made with sound was actually a dystopian film in 1924, I think. And it's a reminder that humans have a couple things at play psychologically. One is this negativity bias. And the negativity bias is sort of born from prehistoric needs to wonder what was outside of our cave, and only the most paranoid survived, right? And those days are coming to an end, right? We're entering a post-barbarism world where you don't actually have to be paranoid in order to survive. And in fact, we start to observe that people who are most optimistic and least cynical are starting to have really favorable outcomes in the world, which is just not historically a trend. This is all to say, I think we make films that play to our sort of psychological desires, but in fact don't reflect the direction that the world is heading, or certainly has headed for 100,000 years. And if, we talked about this earlier, someone said, what do you have to do to believe that the world is getting better? And I actually would turn it around and say, what do you have to do to believe the world is getting worse? You have to believe a lot of things that are contrary to the evidence in order to arrive at the conclusion that the world is getting worse. Because of technology, certainly. And in fact, my argument when people ask, what direction are we headed, is I remind them that for most of human history, the world has gotten better because of technology. And that we can sort of point to these amazing innovations and novel scientific discoveries as places that we never want to go back from, right? Imagine a world pre-anesthesia where you just have to lie awake during a surgery, right? The world is riddled with these examples.
Yes.
The reality is that when someone says, what direction are we headed, it is so hard for me to answer anything other than a very good place, because all of the evidence suggests as much. And so given that, I just have to simply tell you that I think that AI, like every technology before it, serves to move the human experience forward in tremendous ways. And this time, in fact, it may move us forward so far, so fast, that it actually causes some degree of whiplash, which will have its own consequences. But I welcome a world where we have technologies beyond our comprehensions that can improve the world beyond our comprehensions.
That's so good to know. But I think I have then the next question, which is that if I look at AI right now, it's probably capable of doing everything. That's what at least we hear from anybody and everybody who knows enough about AI. So, what electricity did to mankind, what internet did to mankind, is that it made everything impossible possible. So, is there anything right now, according to you, which the AI won't be able to master in the long run?
The answer is, what is the difference between a machine and a human? I suppose is what you're asking at the limit.
Yes.
And there's plenty. But before we go there to sort of some eventual place, I think that it's worth noting that the easiest way that I try to describe machines and AI to people is with the statement that we are building machines with human intellectual equivalence. That's what we're building. And that's a helpful way for people to root themselves in what the machines can and will do, because you can sort of imagine the computational requirements in your day-to-day life. What machines don't seem to possess, and what we are studying and exploring, is this idea of negative space. So the space between what a machine can do and what a human can do, I think actually comes down to the most humanistic elements of our existence. And that in a world where machines, like many machines before them, are very good at automating the task, it turns out that they're actually not particularly welcome and good at automating the experience, the relationship. And COVID actually serves to me as one of these exceptional experiments, because we went about in a period where we were forced to trying to build relationships in a virtual setting, right? We basically tried to virtualize our worlds. And it came with exceptional disinterest and discontent.
Yeah.
And we've rallied back to a physical reality at tremendous material cost, right? The commutes are worse than ever, pollution as a result, the cost of running this office is material. And yet Rudder Finn says we should do this because people want to be with each other.
Yeah.
And so my argument is, there are simply some things we are starting to observe as, I think, immutable human qualities that the machines cannot and probably will not replace. And by the way, we probably don't want them to anyways. And so it's true that we may live in a world where we have computationally equivalent or computationally superior machines. I'm certain we will. There is a tremendous amount that goes into our lives that probably cannot and will not be replaced.
And you've been working with Rudder Finn for a while now. I think one of the things that at Rudder Finn we are focused on is how do we adapt to AI ourselves? But the second thing is, how do we work with our clients to get them to adapt to AI? And I think we see that there are clients who are experimenting with AI, and there are clients who probably are looking at AI from a business transformation perspective. And in your journey and in your interaction with different organizations, considering you've been like an advisor for so many Fortune 500 companies, what's that, where's the tipping point? When does the organization says, yes, it's ready to move over from just experimentation part to business transformation? What will do?
That one's tricky. It depends on, there are a lot of questions that have to be answered before a business can say they should deploy a technology, and very few of those these days actually have to do with whether the technology is perfectly suited for this task. And what I mean by that is, we are entering a new paradigm where the technological threshold, the question what a machine can do, is moving so far, so fast, that it's not actually as interesting as asking what is the societal threshold, what do we want a machine to do? And the societal threshold is a function that includes regulation and policy, social norms, right? Societal impact, economic consequences. And so there are a bunch of things that go into a decision for a business now to introduce AI that actually don't have much to do with, can the machine do this task? And there are plenty of great examples of this. One is, we are very good today now at using machines to identify cancer and radiology scans. They haven't entered the mainstream in hospitals for a slew of reasons. Most people who have access to a radiologist would rather a human do this work.
Yes.
Now, there's a reason for this that we can talk about in a second, and it boils down to basically that we have no tolerance for machine failure, and we have exceptional tolerance for human failure. But also, hospitals are exceptionally regulated environments. So just because we know that machines are now much better than humans at looking at doing radiology, it doesn't mean that we actually could even let them, even if everyone said we're willing to do it, right? Hospitals are regulated environments, and healthcare is a very regulated industry. And moreover, we actually haven't solved for the liability issue, which is when a doctor makes a mistake, there's a bunch of things that happen because systems are designed to allow those things to happen. Insurance kicks in, et cetera. When a machine makes a mistake, we don't really know what to do today, right? The liability law falls apart because the infrastructure doesn't exist. So when someone says, why doesn't a hospital automate radiology with AI? The answer is not that AI cannot do this, right? It's not actually the technological proof of concept. It's the societal threshold. It's a bunch of other stuff. And this is simply to say that we're now in a new paradigm where businesses could do a whole lot more to improve productivity and proficiency inside of them using these tools. There are simply going to be places where a business says it's not worth it. And we talked actually just a second ago about the tools that are at your disposal now to sort of auto clip the conversation that we're having into TikToks. That is welcome. And in fact, you should and probably adopt that tomorrow. And the reason that you haven't is fascinating, which is that the technological threshold moved too fast. So it required Montana saying, hey, this thing exists, because whereas 6 months ago it did not. And so the other reminder here is that in fact, we're now in this paradigm where the technological thresholds move so quickly, a lot of the reason, the remainder of a reason the business doesn't adopt something is because they don't know that they should. They don't know that the technology actually allows them to do it. And so we work on both sides of this problem, helping businesses identify the art of the possible and then helping them manage what should we actually do here.
So you've been a regular visitor to India. This is your third time visit. And I think one of the things which the conversations are that one, how does India get to participate in this AI revolution, considering the fact that we make up for 20% of the world population, and yet the AI seems to have a Western bias. So how do you respond to something like that? And how do you think that as India, as one of the most progressive nations from a technology perspective, what is it that we can do to make sure that we are a part of the AI bandwagon?
Well, so India's recent AI vision, which I think, was it Modi?
Yes.
His vision is brilliant, I will say. I give India a tremendous amount of credit because what India has basically said now is building a sovereign LLM is not the game. And I totally agree with that. Building our own OpenAI isn't the thing. We don't have the compute, we don't have the energy. But if India can become the leader in the application development of AI systems to power both India and the rest of the world, then there's an enormous economic opportunity. And I would actually go a step further. If I were advising Modi and the cabinet, I would basically say that it's in India's interest to be the biggest adopter of AI in the world. Because if India can figure out how to supercharge its economy using AI, it will beat the Europe, basically the economic zones in your sphere, Africa, namely Africa, Europe, and Southeast Asia and China, to the most important game, I think, which is actually driving economic efficiency into your economy. And in a world where an Indian small medium business is 30% more productive than a neighboring small medium business, it can start to have this outsized performance. That also will drive, I think, something that is India is uniquely good at, which is entrepreneurship. Right? Indians are particularly entrepreneurial. We see that, of course, in the States. Many of our CEOs are Indian. Many of our CEO founders are Indian. I have 3 friends in the States from Gujarati, all founders. I mean, there's something. I mean, I realize that state is particularly, but there's something in the water, right? I mean, there is a upstart attitude in India, and if you can fuel that by enabling people to build companies at lower cost structures, meaning, look, you can start this company and you no longer need to hire these 5 people because that work can now be automated. Suddenly, you're giving access to opportunity that just didn't exist. And this, I think, is the opportunity. And I think, as for the Western bias, I don't have a great answer to this. What I would remind everyone is the companies that build these systems did not go out and say, we want to train these systems on an American internet. They said, we want to train these systems on the internet that exists. It so happens that the internet is particularly Western because, but there is a tremendous amount of Indian content in the internet. So to be clear, where these systems are pretty weak is Chinese content, because the Chinese internet sort of stands alone. I don't think it's a long-term problem. I think there's a lot of consternation that goes into the people that build these models are somehow responsible for them. And I cannot stress enough to people, and I realize this is self-serving and it sounds like something I would say, having worked at OpenAI. No OpenAI researcher sits around and says, how can we make this model more like us? That's just not a conversation that happens. What they sit around and say is, how can we make this model more performant for everyone who would want to use it? How can we expand the capacity of these machines? And to do that, you need to introduce it to more and more information. To the extent that India wants to build models that are particularly good at Hindi or low resource Indian dialects, it need only probably fine-tune smaller models on these sort of Indian ideas and Indian languages. But I actually don't think that that's the problem. I really don't think that that's what's necessary here. I think the big challenge is going to be, can you drive the adoption of this technology, and to what extent can India build the software that enables this new AI economy? The software and the agents, the AI agents themselves, because there will be a huge industry there. And then of course, to what extent can it build this digital economy? And what we see is that the reason Southeast Asia has performed so well, and India for that matter, over the last 10 or so years, the reason that these economies are growing 3 to 7%, annually, is because they're leapfrogging traditional digital economy gates and saying, you know what, we can go right to micropayments, we can go right to cryptocurrency, we can go right to neobanks, we can go right to. That has massive advantage. If the Indian economy can say, you know what, we can go right to agentive AI. We don't even, we can skip some enhanced application phase, huge benefits.
Coming closer to the business that we are in, the business of communication, I think one of the things which we realize around us, that there's a lot of adaptation amongst the Gen Z around, and I call it the BYOAI. There are a lot of people who have brought in their own AI tools, and they are actually adapting it at a much faster pace than even before organizations can get to it. So I think if I had to give a message to a young professional who's just starting out in the business of public relations, what are the top 3 skills or top 3 things that they need to do to make sure that they're proficient or are able to leverage
Okay,
AI?
well, PR this is what I talked to Kathy about a long time ago when we first started exploring the opportunity for me to work with Reuter Finn. And if she's listening, I hope she remembers this. What is so interesting about PR, which is also true for many professional services, is that it is truly a game of who you know and how you build that relationship.
Right.
Being the smartest person in the room in PR is not actually the advantage. Knowing how to use Adobe tools is not the advantage. It's having humanistic qualities that mean that people in adjacent industries, in media, etc., want to work with you and are interested in your ideas. That has been true in PR for a long time and continues to be true. And Mad Men, these shows glorify the agents as being these brilliant thinkers, but where the rubber meets the road exists in the relationship. It exists in, can you actually communicate these ideas to the people that need to get these things done? So I would stress to anyone who wants to go into any professional services today, the tools at your disposal to make the computational elements of your job, editing these videos, doing this mock-up, building this creative, writing this copy, those are going to continue to get better. Spending time getting good at writing is not a lost cause, but it's not actually the thing. Spending time figuring out how to become a more curious person, how to find yourself in positions where you can build unique, outsized leverage relationships, where you can know more about an industry than someone else. These are the things I think that actually will separate young people from others. And we are already starting to see this. It is the thing that I am most interested in hiring for. It's, I think, the thing that moves the world forward in professional services and sort of will continue to do so. So of the three things I would tell someone to care about it, it would probably be curiosity, courage, wisdom.
That's so good to know, because I think one of the famous quotes by our very own founder, David Finn, is just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean you can't. So I think, the point that you brilliantly said, that I think there needs to be that curiosity, there needs to be that openness to adapt to new things. I think that's fundamental, I think, and it's no
When
different.
David Finn said that, he could not have possibly known how true that would be.
Yeah.
Right? He could not have known how true that would be. And it will come to be that I'm sure it will come to pass in our lifetimes that we do experience some degree of the matrix, where we learn skills at such a blinding speed. And by the way, that sort of exists today. I mean, it's actually remarkable. We've created worlds in which you can go on vacation and learn how to kite surf. You can go on vacation and learn how to golf. I mean, we've created these worlds where like people can acquire skills that they didn't even know existed, a week ago, because the world is flattening. It's becoming more distributed. It's becoming more accessible for people, despite what the media might tell you. And that is also true in a professional context, right? It used to be you needed to go to college and you needed to learn all of these hard skills in college because they were very hard to learn, right? Excel, PowerPoint, Final Cut Pro. These were things that people spent tons of time studying. And now, spend a couple days on YouTube. You can come up to speed on most technical problems pretty quickly.
Yeah, but I think to your point, which you said a while ago, while most of the movies do paint a dystopian picture, but some part of that movies is definitely coming true, right? With whether it's the Matrix, wherein you could just load a program and probably become the person who could fly the chopper. So yeah,
which, by the way, I think it's described as like a weird world in which anyone can know anything, but I do think Ray Kurzweil's idea of the singularity, while I don't know that I don't know how soon that is, it does present this very fascinating idea, which is, we may not be separated on what we can know and the skills we have. And that's probably a great world to live in. That's actually probably a more accessible, inclusive world. And then we continue to be separated on how we make each other feel and our qualities as beings.
Yeah, definitely. I think one more question which I have from my side, and then anything else that you would want to touch upon, is that I think one of the things which we believe in our profession, which stands out, and I think that realm should stay within the human space, is creativity and intuition. And do you think that in at least in the foreseeable future, do you think AI coming in and trying to get a role to play in those spaces, or those are spaces which will be very
tremendously so? I feel so much more creative because of AI. I feel I have explored ideas on paper that have only ever existed in my mind. And I have talked to people that feel like for the first time ever, they are actually tapping into some other place in their brain. Because you and I, everyone here has basically all had dreams and ideas that we can't possibly articulate in words. But we are also, I don't know about you, I'm not a very good drawer, and I don't know how to use any of the Adobe tools. So I can't actually visualize. I can't represent my ideas except in my mind, and that's fine. I could spend time there, and that's. But if I want to communicate it to someone else, it sort of falls apart. AI presents for me the first time ever where I can actually say, here's an incredible world that I can imagine, but visually or even actually prosaically, that I just couldn't have explained in my own words. I needed a system to actually help me get it out. And moreover, dictating actually has now become this thing that I like to do. Whereas I'll just talk to the machine for a while, record a bunch of stuff, have it summarize, and send it to me. And that's an incredible way for me to explore ideas. Yeah, I think it's already having a profound impact on creativity. And I think to everyone who sort of hand wrings about what does this mean? Will we lose our creativity? That's one way to look at it. The other way you could look at it is a bunch more people just became artists. And a bunch of people on Earth who never learned to draw perfectly can now create beautiful visual representations of the things that exist in their mind.
No, I agree with you completely on that one. I think there are a lot of things that a lot of us would never dream of or could never think of. And I think whether it is drawing, painting, being creative, I think creative was a very, it was a, it was a, it was a space which belonged to very few people. Now everybody can actually contribute to that creative piece with the AI tools. So I think that I definitely resonate with you on that one. I think my last question to you: how did you decide to be a futurist, and how did you decide to be in the world of AI? What motivated you? What prompted you to move in this direction?
I got a job in AI because it was the only job I could find in 2010. So I just got lucky. I worked at a machine learning company. And frankly, the work that I do today, I enjoy because, it's intellectually satiating. So it's super fun. I meet a ton of interesting people. And I think it's actually quite important. I think it's like very important now to talk about the ways in which the world might get better. Not because I want to turn everyone to, and not because I want everyone to be naive to the risk, but because I just think there are so many reasons to be so hopeful and optimistic right now. And communicating those seems like, noble work.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zack. It has been an honor and a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you and welcome to India once again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.